Hi, everybody. It's time for us to talk about comic books. I have a little bit of a stack here from this week's delivery of comics. I actually didn't read a lot of comics this week. I don't know what. I think my order was a little light this time, and I didn't. I only have one actually new comic, and that new comic is. Ba-doop, ba-doop. I like to say it's Angelique. Because everything's somebody's name to me, but it's probably Angelique. Spurrier is writing this, and it's actually pretty fun. This is the first issue, and as you can see from the cover, it's sort of got this genetically modified monkey creature with wings and these genetically modified dolphins. And I'm not sure, it's an alternate universe, I guess, of a time when humans may be around, may not have been around, may have done this to the animals, may not have done this to the animals. This could just be the evolution of them. But this monkey here is the main character, and she is sort of like dealing with a lot of dogma and social restrictions to who she can be and what she can do. And she really wants to fly, and she really wants to be involved in some of the more I don't know, masculine activities that are going on, and they just want her to be, have babies, basically. So it's been interesting. It's a very good first issue. The art is very good. I'm going to keep with it. We'll see how this goes. I liked it. It was a fun surprise. Another good book is this Medicine I've been telling you about. Hopefully you've been reading it. From Action Lab. This is issue number 5, I think. No, number 4. And in this issue, something very graphic happens. There's a character in it who's basically a he-whore. He sleeps with everybody. And it's kind of weird or funny in the sense that he's not really that great looking or anything like that. I mean, it's comic book art, so whatever. But, it's not like he's drawn as being devastatingly handsome or anything like that. Or I don't know if he has a large penis or something. But women keep sleeping with him and then regretting it. And he's very callous to them. Well, in this episode, somebody gets some payback. And it's very graphic. There's a character in here with cat powers, and she basically scratches him in the nether regions, and blood is all over the place. And they don't resolve it in this. He doesn't die. But it's kind of interesting that they even went there, which is one of the good things about this series. I actually hope it continues after 6 issues, but who knows if it will or not. They've done a really good job of building this world of doctors who work on villains, basically. When there's, heroes and villains fight and the action goes down, who's there for the collateral damage? These people are. And this guy's the main guy. He's kind of got some, what they're calling the first powers. They're starting to establish that there's a finite number of powers out there in the universe. And so therefore, when one person passes, it kind of passes on to whoever the next person is. And that may be because of, you may be related to that person, or there may be other reasons why you might inherit the powers. They're just starting to explain that. So it's very interesting, and that's why I want them to keep on going, because I don't think six issues is going to be enough to resolve that. But they've done a great job of just building characters and themes, and the art's pretty good too, so kudos to them. Medicine, you should be reading Medicine. It's one of my favorites going on right now. As I mentioned before, Black Magic is back, and this is the next issue. The art's fantastic. The storyline is getting a little muddy for me, but basically this other coven is still coming for, our main character here, Ms. Black. And that's going to be interesting when it resolves, except for in the letter page, they mention that they've already fucked up their how the issues are going to come out. So who knows if it's going to take a month, 2 months, 5 years. That always really bogs down titles. And it's, one of the things that you expect from Image Comics, I guess, is that, delivery is not going to be so great, which is too bad, because this is a really good comic that should be read, issue by issue. But after this little chunk of it, I might just go trade watching as far as this goes, because it takes too long. It really takes too long. I don't see how some of these, or I do see how some of these creators and artists get uninspired and then they just drop a title, We'll see, but so this one's still good, but hurry up with the issues. We're spoiled. You see, if you're an old person like me, you're spoiled by getting your comics every month. And sometimes the art wasn't the greatest. Maybe sometimes the stories were rushed, but sometimes incredibly creative things could happen under that sort of duress, under that sort of a deadline. So, but nowadays, because it's just about the sale of something, people will just put something out and just either write because they know it's going to be collected later, or just drop it if it doesn't spark. I read an article with Robert Kirkman where he basically said that's what he does. He has had his fingers over a bunch of different titles, and if it doesn't spark, drop it. Just keep on going. I don't know that necessarily means that he's a creative person. He obviously kept on going until he, decided that, zombies was his thing, and that sparked with people. I guess it's one way to go about it. If you don't have a story to tell, you just keep on going until one falls in your lap and you make a lot of money. We got... Don't you just love when I get all philosophical? I don't know. None of that makes sense. Shirtless Firefighter is still going on. I really wish this was an ongoing... It's so good. It's fun. It's so much fun. And yeah, the Shirtless Firefighter's a hunk and everything like that. But they've done a really good job. I mean, they're wrapping it up. I think one more issue is all they've got, or two more issues, maybe one more issue. They're wrapping it up, but they've done such a great first arc. And who Firefighter is, who Shirtless is, who his family is, because that's his daddy right there. Who his family is, how they got, against each other. Why is he fighting bears when he's a shirtless bear? He was raised by bears. You'd think he would love bears, but there's a reason why. How that plays out. There's a conservation sort of storyline going on here because, someone's coming to chop down the forest and use it for toilet paper, which, bear in the woods, all that kind of analogy goes with it. I mean, it's one of those things where even if they weren't thinking of all these kind of things, they've put enough in here for you to start thinking of these kind of things. So that's good writing. That's good art and everything like that. So kudos to them as well. Kudos. I got the second issue of Star Wars Adventures. This one wasn't as good as the first one. But the main story here wrapped up, so I thought it was interesting that they're using Rey. There's definitely an all-ages vibe to this, and trying to be all-inclusive as well, which could be a good thing. We'll see. I'm going to keep going with it. It wasn't terrible, but the resolution just didn't do much for me. It seemed a little quick, and, I mean, it's only 2 issues, so... I mean, the series goes on, but the story was only 2 issues. So there's that. I'm really loving this Victor LaValle's Destroyer, his retelling of Frankenstein. The art has been great. The story is really, really good. And one of the things that I liked that he talks about in his letter page is that a lot of times when there's police brutality, i.e. someone gets shot by the police, and the circumstances surrounding it are, kind of iffy, and we don't get a lot of details sometimes until the person's been exonerated. He suggests not looking necessarily at the police officer who may not have been trained or is misinformed in the situation as it's happening, or is, unable to de-escalate a situation. Not to look at the person who is, being hurt, who's shot, or, what their history is, or what their background is, or who they are as a person. But where is the emphasis on the person who calls in that person? So as an example, one of the characters in this story is a young boy who is leaving his baseball practice, and instead of taking the bus, he decides he's going to walk home. Okay, so we all know situations like that in real life that have been reported, and what happens is that he's walking down the street and somebody just sees him out the window carrying his baseball bat and calls the police. And the conversation that they're having, the person who calls it in is just scared. I don't know why, but is just scared and is calling it in saying somebody's walking down the street with a rifle. Because all they see is a shadow, and they see the shadow of the baseball bat, and they're like, So the 911 or whoever the officer is who answers is asking what's the ethnicity of this person, which I don't understand how that makes sense. How old do you think this person is, which I guess would make a little more sense. All these questions that kind of feed into the kind of like fear that this person is having. And I get it. We're definitely living in a world that's hyping up distress. People are at an all-time high for stress. That's why you need to read more comic books. Distress people. So it's just an interesting way to take it. It's like, who was the most misinformed person of the three in this triangle of what happens when somebody is hurt? Is it the person who gets shot? Is it the cop who is misinformed and does the shooting? Or is it the first person who starts the whole fear of the thing? So it's interesting. Just interesting to think about stuff like that. And all of that. The next comic on the kind of that same lines is the Sisters of Saro one that I'm reading. It's definitely a revenge fantasy. This issue I actually kind of liked more than the first two. This is the third issue, and it's a limited series, so it's not that much of a commitment. The art's very basic. I'm hoping that the storyline will kick in even more. It's starting to gel a little bit. And the basic premise is that there's these women who have all been done wrong in their life, and now they want revenge. Surprise, surprise, it's against men. So, so there you go with that. And of course, they dress as nuns sometimes when they're going to do the killing. In this specific issue, they go after a priest who raped one of the girls. So it's a definite, revenge fantasy sort of thing. All of the situations that each of the characters in this, female characters in this comic have endured are very much, they've been raped or they've been beaten or they've been, each one's kind of got a classic role that they want to get revenge on. So if you are into that kind of idea, this might be an interesting comic for you. I just wish that they would go a little deeper on the women and the characters and flesh them out more of what their feelings are and why they feel the way that they do. It's a little basic. It's a little just sort of like, oh, you've had something bad happen to you? Who was the number one culprit of that? A man? Let's go kill him. So I mean, a little more on the writing on this side, but I like this issue a little bit more than some of the last ones. Here's the last issue for this Luke Cage storyline, of the opening storyline of this. I got it because I like David Walker, who is the writer of this. I liked his Shaft. Interpret that as you will. No, he did Shaft for, I think it was Dynamite, and he's done a great job with that. He gets that character. But does that mean that he gets every African-American character? No, because he's really just phoning it in on this one. This basic story for the first storyline, not really spoiling it for you, is that Luke Cage goes back to the man who created him, the doctor who gave him his powers, and finds out that he's actually still been giving people powers. There's a whole crew of Luke Cages out there, and some of them go through the process and come out insane, and some of them go through the process and are just as strong and just as, even keel as Luke Cage is. And so how does he deal with that? There's, the usual rich, evil people. There's the nurse with a great heart, but then she kind of double deals. All this. It's just kind of basic, and the art's not really good, so that doesn't help either. But this storyline is over, and I think that I read that they're going to start doing a year one for Luke Cage in this title, but I won't be around for it. I just like that he's got this bracelet that says Daddy on it. I don't know why. This cover is sort of like, I don't get, because, I guess the suggestion is that the scientists who, created Luke Cage and all these other people, it's like, oh, you're like my children, you're like my sons, but would you wear a bracelet like that says Daddy for that person? I don't know. It seems a little heavy-handed in this. And then another one that I'm going to be letting go as well is Cable. Boop. I don't think Cable can really carry a title by himself. He's really not that interesting. And one of the things is this. He actually has a very convoluted origin. He has a very convoluted power set. I'm not sure anybody really knows what he can do, except for everything. But no one, and especially in this first arc for this title with Robinson, no one's doing anything interesting with it. So for 5 issues, it's him with a big gun. Okay. That could be interesting if what he's fighting against is something interesting, but it's not. It's this character here who is trying to put together this sword, which I forgot what its name was. It has a crazy, like, power sword. It's like something that basic, you know, the kill sword. He's got to put together 5 pieces to create this sword, and that sword actually cuts through time. So he can go and change events or add to events or just go rob or whatever he wants to do. That's not very interesting. Not to me, anyways. I mean, the concept is basic, and that can be fine if there's other elements going on to it. But you never. There's so much of it of this comic that's just art. There's no dialogue to it. So I don't know what Robinson's doing on this at all. I think this person's just drawing, you know, Cable with different guns. So who knows? Maybe this will get a little reboot or something. I think there's just a Cable comic because he's going to be in the next Deadpool movie, right? And so this is a setup for that. I don't know. So as you can see, there's been some very thoughtful comics this time, but the same olds are the same olds, really. I'm going to tell you that you should get these 5 comics here. The first 5 I mentioned, this Angelique is really good. It's fun, a good beginning. Medicine is probably the one that I like the most right now because they've really gotten me invested in it. And of course, Shirtless Firefighter is awesome. This Destroyer is really good. And I'm probably not doing a great job of describing it. It is a retelling of a Frankenstein story. So this woman here is the doctor who creates a Frankenstein out of her son, who is the character who got shot when he was walking from his baseball game. So there's some politicos in it, but it's also a really good written story. And then Black Magic, I need you to come out in more of a regular, schedule. Otherwise, I'm going to have to drop you too. As fabulous as your art is, as wonderful as your writing is, I don't think that we should have to wait very long for comics. Comics.